Hey guys, what's going on? It's Ash here coming at you today in Clash Royale. Today I have two pros on the mic. They're coming in from the same place, the same hotel room. I don't know where you guys are, but either way, I have Oxalate and trainer Luis on the channel. So happy to have both of you on the channel. How you guys doing?
Awesome, man. I'm excited to be here. This is my first time on the channel. Can honestly say that it's sort of like surreal. I still can't believe hearing your voice on this end of on this side of the whole thing.
Yeah, doing good. Thanks for having us.
Oxalate's a 2-video veteran. He's like, whatever, Luis. I don't care. Come on, man. Let's get on with it. Let's get on with this chat, dude. But seriously, thanks so much for coming on, guys. Now, you guys just went head-to-head in CCGS in the NA bracket. Oxalate came out 2-1 victory, but there's a long time to go. Both of you guys certainly really, really great players. I'm so happy to have you on. I wanted to start out talking about something that you guys mentioned before we started recording, and immediately it caught my ear, I guess, in terms of a really interesting take on the meta right now. So I want to ask both of you. We'll start with Luis because you're the first time pro on the channel. I want to ask you what you think of the meta right now in terms of like the strongest decks, the weaker archetypes, and specifically, you mentioned that now you advocate for arrows over log and even zap in some cases. So talk a little bit about both of those subjects, Luis.
Yeah, so I want to talk, the meta. Right now, I think that the meta is pretty healthy. After sort of going through this first week, looking at some of the matches, and even playing some of the grand challenges, it doesn't feel like it did a couple months ago where if you went into a match, you could sort of tell right away who was going to win it. Obviously, there's skills. I know that at the time there was I know there is some skill factor to it, but I do believe that there's a big, disadvantage if you went in with a specific deck. I no longer think that's the case. I think right now, with enough practice and enough matchup awareness, you can pretty much outplay your opponent for a win. I would say 90% of the time. That's how I'm feeling right now with the meta. I'm really happy with the way it is. The balance. I don't think there's a particularly broken card. I was worried when Mega Knight got announced. I was thinking of that a tank unit that could also splash was going to be just absolutely game breaking. But I think that the community has done a really good job at sort of breaking down how to defend against it, and I think that for that reason, it is not super OP.
Good take. And how about the arrows point too?
So the arrows point, yeah. So I was sort of trying to figure out, preparing for CCGS, kind of figuring it out where to go. And I'm a pretty solid log bait player. So I was trying to, I really want to do it, right? I really wanted to use it. So I started breaking down some of the decks that I could possibly face, and I realized that in the last couple weeks, minions have been pretty prevalent in every meta deck. I think that they're sort of dangerous when you have the Inferno Tower and you have them coming in tanking for you. I've seen that with Lava Hound, for example, or Double Minion Giant, or some other variants of decks that have minion in it. They can be pretty problematic to deal with. I'm not saying they're impossible to deal with without arrows, but I do think that if you use arrows, you have an advantage over a lot of matchups. And it's essentially one thing that I also noticed is that this is actually a pretty big point for log bait players. When your opponent only has zap and you tank for your barrel with your let's say with your knight. Recently, I had noticed that they were able to sort of overcome it because they were using arrow units like whether it was bats or minions or even minion hordes sometime to deal with the barrel. So the tank, that attack combo knight barrel wasn't working as well as it used to. And I was thinking, what's the best way to deal with that? And I thought that with arrows, you catch your opponent off guard. So sometimes they'll place down a minion horde to defend your barrel because they think, okay, he has log bait, so there's no way for him to deal with this immediately. If he has princes, I'll deal with it with a miner later. So you're actually able to get like a positive 2 elixir trade if you do that, or an even elixir trade if they drop minions, and then you get some tower damage, and then you keep your barrel alive. So for that reason, I just thought that arrows are just a much better option, especially because the log aspect of it. I think log is essentially the only very, very useful when you're facing other log bait decks, and you're not out of. It's not like you can't. It's not like the arrows don't have a similar mechanic. In terms of range, if you time it correctly, you can pretty much encapsulate or like get everything that the log can get with arrows.
Yeah, I mean, arrows have the largest range in the game, so definitely a very valid point. Ox, do you agree as far as the arrows, and even moving beyond the bait archetype? Do you agree that arrows are now preferable inside the meta, or how do you feel about that?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely agree. We're seeing a lot of minion horde. We're seeing a lot of minions. We see a lot of Lava Hound decks that incorporate minions. Like Lewis was saying, we're also seeing a lot of Giant that has minions. We're even seeing some more interesting decks like Balloon Cycle with minions. And it feels like minions are becoming so prevalent in the meta. And also what Lewis was saying was that Princess can counter minions, but the thing with that is sometimes they can just randomly throw a miner, and even if you're trying to mix it up, sometimes they'll try to mix it up as well, and you simply can't predict it, and you're kind of at a loss there. So even though with skill you can work around it, I feel like having arrows in your deck is just kind of a bigger safety net.
Yeah, and would you run a second spell, like a bigger spell on top of arrows? Would there ever be a situation where you'd run like arrows and zap in the same deck, especially maybe if you were playing a beatdown deck and you needed that reset for the Inferno Tower?
I would say maybe in like a golem deck, if you have something like Inferno Dragon to take down heavy tanks. But most of the time, I don't think, unless you're expecting something like log bait where you purposely want to counter them and have multiple answers, I think most of the time it's not worth it to have two weaker spells in the same deck. But there are circumstances where you can do it.
I agree with that.
Yeah, so maybe like carry a lightning instead if you're, why not, right? If you already have
Yeah. It's just safer, and if nothing connects to the tower, you have something you can cycle.
I don't think arrows with a cheap, so arrows in log or arrows in zap, I don't think it's ever really beneficial unless you're playing log bait.
Exactly, yeah.
Okay, a good take. And Ox, what do you think of the meta? Do you think there's a strong kind of standalone archetype or deck that is like really at the top of tier 1? Or do you think it's pretty, do you agree with Lewis and that it's pretty spread right now?
Yeah, I mean, I think we're definitely seeing a lot of reappearing themes like log bait, miner control, some P.E.K.K.A, Mega Knight cycle decks. But overall, I feel like you can kind of work around things. Whereas before you would think as miner control as like a hard counter to log bait, you can actually outcycle their log and just do like small things to kind of work around it. So even though I think there's still favored matchups, you can still work around it. So I'm actually really happy with this meta.
Okay, good. You guys played against each other, so I'm interested to take your kind of your thoughts on going against one another now that the match is already in the rear view. Although you might play against each other again, who knows, right? So maybe Ox, just start out by saying a little bit about what your mentality going into the match with Trainer Lewis was, and maybe talk a little bit about the card bans, about what cards you decide to ban in relation to what decks you decide to bring into the matchup.
Yeah, so against Trainer Lewis, I wasn't really sure what he would bring out because I knew he knew what I like to play. So I thought he might try to be a little bit unique and bring something like a P.E.K.K.A, which is typically what I'm known to play. And that's why I ended up banning P.E.K.K.A. And also, I wasn't exactly sure what he was going to play. I ended up playing Lavaloon the first game, which was kind of a mistake on my part. Trainer Lewis predicted it perfectly. But I was trying to throw him off a little bit, but he seemed to catch what I was doing.
And Lewis, what do you think about Oxalate?
What did I ban against you? I forgot.
You banned Pump.
Pump. Okay. So yeah, when I was going into the game, I was worried that he was going to. For some reason, I thought he was going to run Mega Knight Pump. For whatever reason, I thought he was going to do that, and I really wanted to sort of take the Pump out of the equation, so I wouldn't have to deal with off. Because a lot of against a player like Oxalate. So this is like my mentality for Pump. Against a player as good as Oxalate, if he's able to have a starting hand in which Pump is there and I'm not able to punish it, I can pretty much kiss the game goodbye, because I'm not going to be able to get really many positive elixir trades on him because he's a good player. So I don't want to take the chance of going into a match having him pump up and me constantly behind on the cycle to punish the Pump, and then just go into double elixir and just be completely out elixired. So I figured if I just eliminated the Pump, I eliminated the deck one of the decks I thought he was going to run. I also limited the options to Lava Hound, Log Bait, Miner Control, because Pump you can't do some of the for obvious reasons. So that's why I did that. And I was pretty happy with my decision. I going into the first match, I kind of figured he was gonna run that Lava Hound, so I did a little variation of giant beatdown.
Tornado.
Executioner NATO with some arrows. I mean, with some not arrows, with some archers in it. I didn't want to. I was going to put Ewiz, but it's very important to not get so you got to keep in mind what stuff your opponent can think you're going to run. So if I was worried that he was going to think I was going to run log bait and then run arrows, run arrow lightning, which is a variant of Lava Hound. So for that reason, I decided to, instead of putting an Ewiz, just in case he was running lightning, I decided to go with archers to give him less value.
Yeah, it was a good choice. You really, like Ox said, you kind of read his, you get a good read on him on that first match for sure. You mentioned, Lewis, that you have a regret in the matchups. Yeah. What was that, if you don't mind sharing? I
don't think I should have ran. Okay, so 2 regrets. One of them is very micro. The other one is like pretty big. It was I actually talked to Ox about this. The second match, I really shouldn't have gone with the same deck. I should have switched in minions instead. Because what happened is that he was able to keep so much pressure on me with his minor control, and make it so I couldn't build up an elixir enough to sort of snowball him with a one big push. So if I had gone up with minions, I could have actually tanked his Inferno Tower with my minions at times, and maybe get one of those big pushes going. Unfortunately, I didn't do that, so he was able to outplay me in that one. And then the second match was a huge mistake. I pretty much, if you watch the replay, and I think I forget the exact time, but I'm pretty sure after I realized exactly what he was playing, I threw up a good game, because I just knew he was gonna win. I shouldn't have gone with the variant of Lava Hound that I used, because log bait is just so dominant against it. I just didn't expect him to use log bait. But that's one of those things where at this stage it's also about deck choice, but strategic deck choice. And Oxley just had a great. He really made an awesome choice, and I could have done it a little bit different. I shouldn't have gone with the variant I did with.
A question for both of you guys is, start with you, Ox, is if you're going against a player who, in your heart of hearts, you think might be a little bit better than you, how do you approach that match from a strategic sense? Do you change anything? Do you play a little bit more defensively? Do you change is there an archetype that you feel a little bit more comfortable with when you feel like you're not the best player on sheer skill? How do you handle that situation?
Yeah, so with card bans, I would say if they're more of a one-deck player, I would definitely ban a card that they're more used to playing if you're thinking you can outplay them with a different archetype. But typically, I would go with a control deck just because you can control the tempo a little bit better. I feel like it's just a safer option. But if you're really feeling like they're a very strong control player, then maybe you should go beat down, because if they make one mistake, you can get a really good connection on their tower.
And would you change your play style at all? Like be a little bit more passive and wait for them to make a mistake? Or maybe you take the opposite approach and be maybe even more aggressive and try to keep them off their toes, off their game a little bit?
At the beginning, I would be a lot more passive and really concentrate on keeping track of their cycle. And then every time you think they don't have something that counters something that you have, to be a little bit aggressive and see if you can kind of catch them off guard. So let's say if they don't have goblins in cycle, they don't have knight in cycle, like they put knight on the opposite lane, just put a bandit at the front and see if you can catch them off guard a little bit on the other side.
And I feel like this meta is kind of evolving in a way. Maybe it's just my take, but I almost feel like punishing opposite lane has become like a staple of every deck. Whereas before it used to be like, oh, if they drop a golem in the back, you just pressure the opposite lane. Now I feel like with Bandit being so popular and previously Battle Ram, I think that, and with Hog everywhere, I just think that there's more options to rush the other lane. So it's been added to the game in other situations other than when they just drop a tank in the back or a pump. Do you guys agree with that? And if so, how do you manage that situation of where you should put pressure and when you shouldn't?
Yeah, so I think as the game is growing a little bit more, people are getting a lot smarter and realizing they can't just cycle cards in the back if they put something like a giant in the back and then defend and counter push. You have to make sure you're pressuring the opposite lane and just kind of taking advantage of everything you see. I feel like you just have to be a lot more conscious of what they have in cycle and what they're trying to do.
Yeah, I mean, one thing that I struggle with in Lewis, maybe you have a take on this too, is I just never know how much pressure to put on the other lane. You know, like even if I have a general awareness of my opponent's elixir, you know, I see some pros, they just go all out and they just tower trade, or you know they can lean on an Inferno Dragon or a Minion Horde on the other end, so they go a little bit extra than they normally would when applying pressure to the other side. Where do you kind of fall in that, you know, strategic question, I guess? And what would be your advice be to somebody like me who, you know, just finds it hard to gauge how hard they should go in the opposite lane at times?
Yeah, so that's a great question. I think that the way to assess that is a per deck basis. By that I mean, I think that if you play Clash long enough in any given meta, you sort of like seeing the first 3 cards or first 3 to 4 cards, you can sort of tell, or even the first card, even depending on their deck, because the question applies to strictly when somebody plays like a tank in the back, correct?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Or maybe someone comes at you with like I don't know, a bandit bats or something, and you know you can shut it down easily, so you want to immediately, you think they might have overextended a little bit because they were low in elixir. You might want to just pressure the other lane, but you know, like I often find that I'm just getting in these lane battles, you know, and and sometimes even like a Mega Knight or something will, once you know you're defending something, they'll push with like a Mega Knight and bats or something crazy, and the other lane you'll be like, holy crap, I over defended there, now I have nothing left, you know?
Yeah. I totally get that. So what I was saying is that I think that you kind of have to think of how much elixir they can defend you with. You think of how much elixir they just spend and what cards they typically will have, and if that is enough in terms of elixir and cards to defend the amount of elixir you're going to commit on the other side. So they drop a Lava Hound in the back. That means they're at 3 elixir at the moment. Which means that a Lava Hound is almost always, I mean, not 100% of the time, but almost always ran with Tombstone. So you got to think, he has 3 elixir right now to defend my possible 10 elixir push on the right lane. Mm-hmm. So if you have a Bandit in hand and a Miner in hand, I would suggest possibly going in Miner Bandit, and then once that Tombstone, if you have Zap, zapping the.
Oh, dude, Lewis, we don't have Zap anymore, man. We only have arrows.
That's true. But let's say you do have Zap because you haven't seen this video yet. I would say that you just kind of make that assessment. You would think how much elixir they can defend you with, and use the bare minimum to apply pressure. A lot of players won't be if it's still not double elixir, they won't be okay with letting that tower go, and they'll only be able to defend it with say 3 elixir, and you'll be able to, if they commit additional elixir at that point. Let's say now that the bandit connected, he now drops like a Goblin Gang or something to clean up your attack. He now has 7 elixir going down the lane, and has now defended with 6 elixir, and you with 6 as well. So now you guys have sort of like this. Now you have he's down on elixir, and now you can defend the Lava Hound pretty comfortably.
Yeah, I think that's a good answer, and I think that, you know, the more you play a certain deck, you know what you can afford, I think, you know, to push and to be able to defend on the opposite side. I have 3 questions left for you guys. I want to do it rapid fire, okay? So you get like 30 seconds or so to answer these questions. Number 1 is, both of you came onto the scene a little bit late. I mean, no offense, guys, but you're both kind of late bloomers, and now you're pros, and you're there in California, you know, making tons of money, right? Playing a mobile game, which is awesome. So I wonder, this pertains to both of you guys. Ox, you can go first. Was there a pivotal moment in your evolution as a player, or was there something that kind of clicked for you, or was there, anything that you can kind of look back and say that was something that, I was playing this deck, or I got this piece of advice or something, and things started to change from there. Was there a moment like that, or was it more gradual?
Yeah, I think for me it was more gradual. I can't really pinpoint an exact moment when I completely, changed my mindset while playing. But I feel like I started to realize that, like, a lot of people when they're playing games on ladder or challenges, they just kind of mindlessly play.
Mm-hmm.
I think once you start really trying to keep track of their cycle, and that doesn't mean keeping track of their exact cycle, but if there's like a pivotal card that you need to keep track of, like log, if you're playing log bait, which is like the most cliche example, you got to keep track of that log and just know where it is, and just being conscious, like thinking, okay, let's say they put an ice golem in the back, or should you push into that with a bandit, or should you pressure the other side? You should almost always pressure the other side because you're pushing into them. So I think just trying to think before you make every move is really helpful, and as you play more, it becomes a little bit more reactive.
Okay, Lewis?
So for me, I just quote everything he said for the card cycle. Mm-hmm. I think it's so important to sort of keep track of those cards that are going to hurt you on offense or even defense. I think that's pretty game changing for any player that's trying to get better. And then my second thing, which I strongly recommend, I have a practice partner. I'm going to take a little second to give somebody a shout out.
Sure.
His name is Daniel. We practice a ton. And we practice specific matchups, and we're on call when we're playing them, and we talk about ways to beat the matchup. We talk about we break down specific attacking combos and how the opponent can defend it, and how we would be left if he did defend it. So it's a lot about talking about matchups with a friend. If you sit down an afternoon and practice for 3 hours the same matchup over and over again, you'll eventually learn how to play it pretty well.
That's true. I guess you get every single scenario kind of drilled into your brain, and you get some sort of like a muscle memory in terms of how best to handle each situation. It's good advice. Next question is the card bans. Are you guys in favor of card bans, or are you not a fan of card bans? It's been a hot topic in the community lately.
I love it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think card bans are kind of the next step in Clash Royale. I don't know if this format for this particular event is the best format. I think something along the lines of, if you lose a game, then the loser can pick a ban, and then if he loses that game, the other person can pick a ban. Just because I feel like it can be kind of annoying that if you don't want to, you cannot face a card for the entire tournament. But still, I feel like card bans are a pretty good way to kind of eliminate rock, paper, scissors a little bit, and eliminate things that really are hard counters.
Okay. Lewis, you agree or disagree?
I partially agree. So okay. I do love I absolutely love the format. I wish that it had been applied since day one. Obviously, I think that would have been really hard to do. So many players trying to qualify and stuff. Or I at least wish it was announced earlier. I'm not sure if it was. Maybe it was my own fault for not keeping up with the rules, but I love it. I really do. I think that even there is still some deck advantage, and there's still times where you get hard counter, but now there's a strategic element of let's entertain the people that like to. Which I have said rock paper scissors before. So let's talk about that. Let's say. Now, before it was rock paper scissors mindlessly. Now there's a strategy to choosing paper over scissors.
Yeah.
If that makes sense. Now even being placed against a hard counter with card bans, most of the time against between pro players, it was a prediction rock versus scissors.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. I like that. I think that I'm more towards your side of the card ban thing. I just wish there was a way to kind of implement that inside the game for us, like normal non-pro players. That way we can kind of practice and get that same feel that you guys have. But I guess that's another video for another day. So moving on to the last question. You guys both dealt with Wi-Fi issues in the in CCGS. I just wanted to ask you a more broad question. Obviously, that's really frustrating to lose a match because of Wi-Fi issues at an event that, you know, eventually will lead to $1 million prize pool. But, you know, what has your experience been at a live event other than that, and what could be improved, and what is it like playing under the spotlight?
You want to take it first?
Yeah, sure. I actually like playing live. I think it's a lot of fun. But obviously, the main reason I came out was so that if I did have some Wi-Fi issues, they could be corrected. But other than that, I think it's a lot of fun playing live. I think it's a really good experience. And the finals are mandatory if you make top 6. So I feel like kind of getting that exposure and becoming more experienced with playing live is definitely going to be more helpful.
Lewis?
Yeah, this is actually my first live event ever. So it was pretty nerve-wracking, I would say. But I love it, man. The guy over here with us, his name's Sal. He's our host. He has made everything so smooth. So I've just enjoyed it a lot. I think that getting to meet Colton, getting to meet Ox. I mean, Ox and me have become pretty good friends in the last couple of days. We actually decided to, if we start doing YouTube, which we both will, start doing it more daily. We're going to do some collabs and stuff. So I think it's opened up a lot of possibilities. It sucks that my third match was decided, my third set or whatever you want to call it, my third matchup was decided by lag. But I can honestly say that I'm walking out of this weekend with like mostly glad that I came.
Yeah, I agree.
That's so awesome to hear, guys. You both are such quality individuals that I would expect none less from you guys. But it's great to hear that you're having a good time and you've struck up a friendship, and that you're both going to have YouTube channels. If you ever need a slightly above average player to guest star on your channel, I'm available. Just saying, fellas. But seriously, do you both have Ox? I know you do, but Lewis, do you have a YouTube channel like created? Yeah.
No, I don't. It'll be called Trainer Luis CR more likely than not, which is my Twitter handle. It'll most likely be in Spanish.
Okay.
I've noticed that I have a pretty big following in Spanish over Twitter, so cool. I'm probably gonna go that way. But yeah, Ox and me are definitely we actually were streaming together yesterday at 2v2s. It was pretty fun. It felt
bullying,
like
doing a little bullying.
Yeah,
it was a good time.
I felt kind of like bullying at times, but it was very fun. We actually faced Adam, Logbaber's Logbait.
Yeah.
Oh wow.
We were able to beat him.
Nice. Good job, guys. Well, I'll be sure to link both of it. We're gonna make sure that Lewis sets up a YouTube channel before this goes live, and I'll link both Oxalate and in Lewis's YouTube, and you guys can be sure to subscribe. They're both gonna have fantastic content. You heard them in this interview. They have a lot to say about the game, and they have a great insight onto strategy that you really can't find anywhere else. So, guys, thanks again for coming on. Do you have any last second shout-outs, anything like that, before I let you go?
Shout out to Richard, general manager over at Nova. Without him, I would not be here. Like in the competitive scene.
I gotcha.
Yeah, I'm gonna shout out my brother again, Oxalate Bros, who actually got me into the game. So without him, I wouldn't be here.
So cool, guys. You're both, I loved having you on. This is one of my favorite videos ever done. I got to get more 2Pro videos out there because it's a great fun. And I just wanted to thank you both for coming on again.
Thank you, Ash.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
No problem at all. So, guys, that's going to do it for today's video. I hope you enjoyed
it.
Wait,
Ash, I think I'm your first Venezuelan pro.
Well, let's put it on the board. First Venezuelan pro, I think.
Yeah, I think so.
We're not offending anybody.
Have you ever had Pedro on the channel?
No.
Yeah, I'm your first Venezuelan pro.
All right, there we go. First Venezuelan pro, ladies and gentlemen. Mark it on the board. It's official. September, 19th by the time you guys are watching this. And we had Lewis, our first Venezuelan. So thanks, Lewis. So guys, that is going to do it for today's video. Make sure you check out both of these YouTubers, these pros, in the description below, along with my YouTube partner and sponsor, Bren Chong. Make sure you give him some love as well. Guys, thanks so much for watching. And as always, take care, guys.